It's really important to have a great broker. And one of the criteria for a great broker is, I like to say that they're niched. For example, all I do is retail and restaurants. If you're looking in the industrial, make sure you have an industrial broker. If you're looking multifamily, make sure they understand multifamily. The way I explain it, Jeremy, is, would you go to your foot doctor for an eye problem? Right? Everyone has a license, but it's in a different area. So it's really important to align with the experts in whichever asset class you're looking at.
You're listening to the Managing Commercial Real Estate Risk podcast, the show that helps you manage the risk and unleash your profits. Learn how to grow your portfolio the right way with your host, CRE advisor, and co-founder of Shine Insurance, Jeremy Goodrich.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Risk podcast, where we believe if you identify, understand, and manage the risk in your commercial real estate journey, it will unleash those profits. That is the goal. That is done by decision-making, quick, thoughtful, intelligent decision-making based on the facts that you have in the scenario. It's done using your business plan, and it's done using your team of people around you, the trusted advisors and members of your team. This is how you build great decision-making, which leads to less risk, which leads to more profit. I am your host, Jeremy Goodrich, and on the show today, we have a broker out of Madison, Wisconsin. Her name is Heather Ewing. She's the founder of Abstract Commercial Real Estate. She works primarily in retail and restaurant, so mostly triple net deals, right? So if a restaurant is coming into your property, you're making an agreement with them. Oftentimes, as the property owner, your lease assigns much of the cost associated with that building to the leasee. Oftentimes, property taxes are in the mix on that. Oftentimes, common area maintenance is in the mix on that. Oftentimes, insurance is in the mix on that. Although during our conversation, I definitely line out a little bit my opinions on how you should structure the insurance piece. But she talks a lot about how to attract the best tenants and how to find the best deals in the triple net world. So if you are already a triple net investor, this show is absolutely for you. If you're someone who's interested in investing in Madison, Wisconsin, Heather definitely talks about the value of Madison as a tertiary market. About 500,000 people live there. It is a state capital. It also has a large college, state college. So there's a lot of elements about Madison, Wisconsin in particular that are valuable there. And then we talked for a little while about leases and how to really be creative with leases and make sure you're getting the most out of the property while at the same time making sure that things are clear with your tenants. So that is what you will come away with from listening to the show today. A better understanding of retail, a better understanding of triple net leases, and a conversation about how to navigate a market like Madison, Wisconsin. All right. Without further ado, my conversation with Heather Ewing. So I want to start with my Madison story. So Y2K, I live in Southern Indiana, right? Which is about 6 hours from Madison, Indiana, maybe 7 hours from Madison, Indiana. And for Y2K, for New Year's, I spent it in Madison, Indiana with my girlfriend at the time's family, her grandparents, everybody who all live up there. And we had a wonderful time. As it turned out, computers did not crash. The world of data and information did not go silent. And so when we woke up on January 1st of 2000, everything was fine. So that was my Madison, Indiana experience. How do you see Madison as it plays in your world and the world of commercial real estate?
It's a great question. So the nice thing about Madison, Wisconsin, I was actually born and raised here. So I've lived in the area over 45 years. I know it inside and out. And when it comes to commercial real estate, really having that familiarity and understanding goes far beyond the demographics. And into the psychographics, right? So understanding how different areas within the city see the commercial real estate, as far as some of the little unique areas really are not positioned for any type of retail or credit tenant. They would probably banish them, right? So that's where you really need to find someone that's local or regional. Having the university, UW-Madison, Wisconsin, also being the state capital city, that really has buffered Madison from a lot of the COVID challenges that we experienced and the various waves of that. And in general, it just brings a lot of energy. And because of those two sites, if you want to say, it brings a lot of retailers, both locally, nationally, regionally, and worldwide. Mm-hmm. It's a great area to invest and continues to increase with its value.
Yeah, I think you mentioned two things that make a market a good market. One, a state capital pretty much is always a decent market at worst, because you're always going to have the commerce and things that come with being a state capital. And then if you have a university in town, particularly because Madison is not that big. Well, let me ask it as a question. How big is Madison as far as population?
Sure. When you look at us in totality, we're under 500,000. So we're a smaller market, tertiary in that sense. But again, referring back to the university and the state capital is what really pulls people in. We also have a high percentage of international students because of the courses and degrees offered through the university. So people frequently will move away, but they'll come back as they do have families, things of that nature. And one of the fun thing with the retail and restaurants is that someone either went to the UW-Madison, had a friend that went to UW, or they remember a party.
Mm-hmm, right.
And they end up having interest in the commercial real estate and put roots down and invest not only in their business, but also community.
I love it. So you're focused really on the retail space, which excites me. And I want to dig into that a little bit. When you talk about retail in a tertiary market that has, I mean, it's a little bit of a college town, a state capital, has so many things going it from that perspective. What attracts people in the retail space to investing in Madison?
Having the high pedestrian counts. For example, in our downtown Madison, in our bid district, it's a business improvement district. I've been on the board for that for many years. Geographically, it loops around the Capitol Square down State Street, which is a main street. Many people have heard that, especially if they went to the UW or visit. And then it reaches out to some of the cross streets. So with that, pedestrian counts or vehicle counts, that's a major attractor for retail and restaurants. Additionally, with COVID, people are really excited to get out. People were also utilizing a lot of the drive-through options. We also saw a lot of the shifts of adding pickup windows, things of that nature, to make it more accessible, easy for people. And even though COVID is essentially over, people got used to the convenience. They want to be able to have something within, a couple minutes. There's also an increase in app-driven ordering, things of that nature. You may have heard of the term ghost kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I brokered one of those deals. It's the first one here in the downtown Madison, and it allows for just complete convenience. It's essentially a large kitchen. There isn't a dining area. It's very transactional. You're ordering via an app, you're coming in, you're grabbing it, and you're going.
So it's like going up at your Dominos Pizza, when you get a pizza or whatever, and you just go in, you get your thing and you leave. There's more and more of that's from different types of foods. Is that right?
Right. And even taking that Domino's example a little bit more, it's strictly, there is no seating at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not even an option. You're in and you're out. But especially on a campus, think of the turnover, right? And think of all of the revenue gains because of that model. Whereas in suburbia or a little further out, typically that's where all the drive-throughs are being added, such as Jimmy John's. And you'll see a lot of the national retailers are adding the drive-through concept because they're realizing the increase in revenue that they're able to receive.
So a lot of investors would say retail in particular, I mean, certainly during COVID, but even out on the back end, is a fairly risky investment. I'm sure that you have a different perspective. Can you talk a little bit about the counter to that argument?
Definitely. I think it's one of those, you have your newer players to the market, and then you also have the retailers that they've been in several rodeos, right? It's a rinse and repeat process at that point. They have 3+ stores and they're making a good income from that. So with the newer tenants, it's really important to align with a great lender. Here in Madison, there's banks that are really good with the SBA loans. The plus side of that is if you own 51% or more, you're able to inhabit that property and get really good interest rates. It reduces closing fees. There's different bonuses at different times. The minus on that is that it does have a longer process to go through additional underwriting. So it's about an extra 30 days. In Madison, we're somewhere in that 60+ day range for an SBA loan, whereas a conventional loan, you might be in the 45-day range.
Lending is obviously a huge part of the conversation, no matter what you're investing in. And so doing an SBA loan type of thing gets you better interest rate, potentially better terms across the board, maybe lower closing costs, things of that nature. How do you tend to, or how would you advise an investor, maybe anywhere in the country, but using Madison as your foundation, to find the right lenders to really get you into the right product?
That's where it's really important to have a great broker. And one of the criteria for a great broker is, I like to say that they're niched. For example, all I do is retail and restaurants. If you're looking in the industrial, make sure you have an industrial broker. If you're looking multifamily, make sure they understand multifamily. The way I explain it, Jeremy, is, would you go to your foot doctor for an eye problem?
Right.
Right? Everyone has a license, but it's in a different area. So it's really important to align with the experts in whichever asset class you're looking at. And then that's where too, with your question about the tenants and moving further in retail, after you have connected with that right lender, there's also grants. And this also further exemplifies of working with someone in that expertise. There are retail and restaurant grants right now available in Madison. So I'm sure there's other grants throughout the country as well. But since I am, I live, breathe, and I also taste test, I'm always helping in that sense too. There are Wisconsin state grants. There's an ARPA grant that's for economic development. So really aligning with the right broker, the right lender, having your business plan. And that's where I've suggested to people, I suggest you wait. And it's kind of thrown them for a loop, but I bet on people's success. I want people to be successful. Some people have significant, maybe a family trust or things of that nature. I'm all for putting someone in a great space if I feel they're going to be successful. And I like to ask those questions because at the end of the day, it's their decision. It's their money. I want to bet on people's wins, not losses. And that's how I carry a strong relationship with someone, because it's genuinely helping them decide that.
I think that makes sense. And for listeners that are in any other parts of the country, depending on what you're investing in, depending on what you're doing, but restaurants, retail are a place where you can find grant money potentially at a federal level, at a state level, or at a city level. Obviously depends on the where you're investing, but talking with brokers in that area is really, really key. So you talked about a couple of ways that we can limit risk there, Heather. One of them is making sure that we're connecting with the right brokers in the area. And that is someone who is a specialist in the thing you're trying to invest in and a specialist in the market that you're considering investing in. And then the other is how you manage the cost. So two things associated with that you just described. One is lending. Obviously, I'm seeing deals, particularly in multifamily, where the interest rates on the loans are killing the deals. We're losing the cap rate for multiple reasons, but one of them being the interest rates going up on the loan. So that's affecting the loan. And one way to mitigate that is to find a lender who can do maybe an SBA instead of a conventional things like that limit your costs associated. And the last thing you said is grants, like we just talked about, potentially free money for making sure that you better a community, you better a district, you better a neighborhood. If you're lifting up that neighborhood, you could potentially get grants for it. Or if you're like in an opportunity zone, people who invest could have better tax benefits and things of that nature. Did I hit on all the things you were hitting on there?
those are great things. And one other to add to it, Jeremy, is the lease itself.
Talk a little bit about that. How could we better our investment by the way we structure a lease?
Right. So people that aren't very familiar with commercial real estate, I think, don't realize how creative it is. And the other hand or complement of that is the market knowledge. Again, go to an expert in whatever asset class you want. So for example, in Wisconsin, working exclusively with the retail and restaurants, I know what the deals are being done at because I've done a lot of them. Also, since I am Madison, I've done many of those leases in the downtown and also throughout the surrounding area. That allows you to push harder. It allows you to know what the market rate is because these numbers are not published. It's all through brokers. It's all through relationships and their knowledge. It's not in CoStar. It's not in these different areas. So it's very different than residential in that sense. And as you know, relationships are the essence of business. They're the essence of life. And through creating those, fostering them, and really helping your client, that's how you further the business. So, for example, with the triple net leases, if you're on the landlord side, you want to make sure that the pass-throughs or the triple net is paid by your tenant. The nice thing about that is you have capital improvements, maybe, every so often, but everything else is passed on. So it's a great passive investment. The triple net, for people that may not be aware, one is the property tax for the entire property, not just the space that the tenant is leasing. The other is CAM, common area maintenance. That takes care of the aesthetics. I always like to say it makes the property look good. So that is if you need to repave the parking lot, the striping, the planters, cleaning of windows, things of that nature. And then the last one is, the real estate taxes. Here in the downtown, in our bid district, there's additional expenses that get passed through. So from the landlord vantage point, triple net leases are great. From an investment standpoint, again, if you're not a broker that is investing, you want to connect in and have a good relationship with that broker because you can up-level your rents.
Absolutely. And I think the insurance is the other piece that tends to pass through as well. And one of the pieces of advice I have for a lot of my triple net clients is that, if you can, one little piece of advice, you pass through the cost. You don't necessarily have to pass the insurance policy over to the tenant. In fact, there's a lot of reasons not to. Now, a lot of triple net leases do, where you say in the lease, as the landlord, as the property owner, you need to get insurance for this property. You need to get the building insurance. You need to get insurance for liability. You need to name me as an additional insured on your insurance policy. And you pass on the entire process of purchasing that insurance to your tenant. That's the most common way of doing it. I would push back on that a little bit and say, do you really want your tenant to be in charge of protecting your building, of mitigating the risk associated with that building of a fire, whatever, those kinds of things? In my opinion, the best way to do that is to keep the insurance policy in your own name and pass the costs of that insurance policy on to your tenants. Just two ways of doing the same thing. But that gets, Heather, into the idea that these leases that you work up they are kind of the Wild West. When you read through it, there's all sorts of different ways you can do every single element of any lease, but specifically a triple net lease. And that's just one example of how the lease really matters, how you set it up. What are some mistakes you see people make when it comes to leases in a triple net situation?
Sure. Well, one of the interesting points is that in Wisconsin it is standard for the landlord to have the insurance for the shell, if you want to say, of the property, and then the space within the tenant has their insurance for that.
And that's right.
Well.
That's good. Yeah, that's how I would do it. Yep.
Right. So in that sense, we are a little unique, it sounds like, which is a win. What I see sometimes is that, and this is for very new people, that they think that they can negotiate a lease on their own. We as brokers always recommend get a real estate attorney that's familiar with commercial, not residential, because they're two very different experiences is kind of like a water and oil, that you need to get a great real estate attorney. And some people just want to save the cost. But what happens is they're going to pay more through the entire term. And two, if something's wrong, who do you go to? The real estate attorney. So go up front. We as brokers negotiate the deal terms, the attorneys add in the additional verbiage. Also, I say anyone can do a deal, but they don't have the market knowledge. And so sometimes you also see that scenario where they don't seek the help of a broker, which is free for tenants.
Absolutely. I think that's two things. What you just said, the help of a broker is free for tenants. Super important for someone to understand. And then under that contractual, just our conversation around lease, I think when it comes to risk, there are really three buckets of risk that we navigate as commercial real estate investors. One is physical risk, the elements of the building that could potentially hurt other people or be damage our investment, things of that nature. The second is contractual risk, and that's really relationships. So many of the relationships that we have in commercial real estate are contractual, whether it's a JV relationship or a GP partnership or having investors through syndication, or obviously our tenants and the leases that we have. All of those relationships are built on contracts, and everything plays off of that. And so, like you're saying, Heather, when you hire a real estate attorney to help you set up those relationships, it's what's going to make them either healthy or really, really problematic. And I mean that on two different levels. One is if something goes bad, obviously that contract means a lot because you're going to come back to that and say, okay, well, what's going on in that? But also it sets the standard from the beginning. People look at that lease at the beginning, and that's the premise and the framework that they look at the relationship from right from the start. So if it's set up well, if it's clear, if it's aligned properly, it's more likely to create a healthy relationship from the beginning as well. So not only does it navigate the negative when bad things happen, but it's also establishing the foundation, the benchmark of how the relationship would work. I know I just got on a little soapbox there myself. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, if you think about it, it directly affects their livelihood, right? And it is a serious endeavor. And people, this is something too, if you're not familiar with triple net leasing, that they're millions of dollars. And people, I think when they hear the term leasing, they think, oh, maybe 500K. But they are millions, and they're big investments. They're also 10, 20 years, things of that nature. So it's not something to take lightly. And what I like to say is you want to create your pivotal partners. And it all stems off of people that know your asset class. And this is my soapbox, as you can see. And that's where the lenders, I refer to people, work with a lot of restaurants and retail. The contractors too, because I'll never forget a contractor coming in years ago, and he wanted to put a drop ceiling in. You don't do that in retail, unless it's maybe a massage studio or something like that. But build outs are different by different asset classes too. There's different standards per se, the lending, everything, insurance, that they understand how retail restaurants work. So it's really finding the experts in each of those arenas that are niched in your asset class. And that's how you're going to get minimal risk and your greatest opportunity for growth and success. So I completely agree with you. It's very important.
Managing commercial real estate risk is brought to you by Shine Insurance. Shine Insurance's entire goal is to change the way you feel about insurance. Our commercial division is 100% focused on commercial real estate investors. That means when you're calling us, when you're wanting to talk with us about insurance, we speak your language. We work with investors from 10 doors to 5,000 doors all across the United States. And one of the things we hear a lot is that folks need ballparks for their underwriting, right? You're at the beginning of an underwriting process. You found a deal that's off market through a friend or through calling owner after owner after owner and finally getting something. You're starting to pencil through it, and you get to the insurance line and you're like, I don't know. I have no idea. So you listen to your guru, or you listen to your friend, or you listen to whoever who says, put $250 a door in there, put $500 a door in there, all over the place. And it really can kill your underwriting. Of course, everything that we do in the underwriting process needs to be as correct as possible. And so at Shine, we've created a solution for the ballpark you need in the penciling phase. What you can do is go to shineinsurance.com/ballpark. You answer 9 simple yes or no questions, and you get a ballpark insurance proposal immediately. It'll give you a general number for the area that the property is in that you can expect for insurance. So again, go to shineinsurance.com/ballpark, plug in 9 simple yes or no questions, and get the answer to that underwriting piece. Make sure you don't listen to those gurus. Make sure you don't listen to that friend. Go out there and get a number that actually makes sense for the property you're considering. It's just one way we're trying to change the way you feel about insurance and serve our mantra, simple, smart, shine. So for someone who is thinking about maybe they're in one asset class and they want to come to the world of retail, restaurant, triple net leases, maybe they're in a different market and they want to come to your market. What are some ways that what are the entry points that an investor could start with as far as getting into, retail, restaurant, triple net in a given, I want to generalize it because most of our listeners aren't in Madison, Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, Indiana, also a very nice small town, but nothing as cool as
I'll have
Madison,
to come
Wisconsin.
visit.
A little river town right on the Ohio River at the south part of Indiana. But what are the access points?
Sure. So I would say, again, go to some of the different events in the area. That's how you can get to know brokers. Ask around. Maybe there's a retailer or a restaurant that you really like. Ask the owner, what broker did you work with? Was it a good experience? Did they deliver? Are you happy with your lease? A lot of times you can gain the knowledge by getting out, hitting the streets, asking the questions. Of course, with the nationals and the credit tenants, you're much more removed in that sense, but typically go to the area that you are interested in and just drop into stores is what I'd recommend. And from the brokerage end, the nice thing is, there's so many connections through social media, through LinkedIn, that you can connect with brokers all over. So even though I am firmly planted in Madison, I regularly attend events in Florida. So I go to broker events there. I was just there last week, actually, for an investment seminar. I'll be in Vegas next month for the big ICSC, which is huge on triple net leasing. So if someone in your audience is interested, I would tell them to go. Rooms, flights, everything is booking up. It's one of the largest events within Vegas itself. So that's a great opportunity. And I'm happy to field questions for people, direct them. And it goes back to the relationships of helping others. And we are all going to need help. And I say it's really living by the golden rule. Be a good person, share your expertise, because we all need help in different areas. So the world is very small, especially with LinkedIn and the social media. Get on social media, you'll learn a lot.
I love that. Pivotal partners. So not only finding your pivotal partners, but being able to set yourself up to be one. And one of the great ways to do that is simply to go out. If you're, if you search retail, brokerage, Madison, Indiana, I imagine, Heather, you come up pretty high on that list and folks can find that. And so as a listener, one is, if you think about your own LinkedIn profile, does it answer the questions that you want people to find you for? If Heather looks at her LinkedIn profile and it doesn't say retail, restaurant, real estate broker in Madison, Wisconsin, then she maybe needs to adjust that so that people can search to find that. And everybody has their thing. And so the better you can articulate in your profiles of LinkedIn and other social media exactly who it is and what you do, it makes people able to find you more. And the reverse, of course, is true. I was searching for a certain type of insurance company last week that I just wanted to get into a specific niche, and I need to know who the leaders were in that space. And so I went out and I searched some hashtags and some things in LinkedIn. And then from there, I studied those companies. I studied their website. I studied their reviews. I made a phone call and got a meeting with the person who I wanted to talk with. And it's such a small world, like you just said, Heather, in the way that things are set up right now. And so there's really no excuse to not be able to find that, right?
Right. And to your point, I think a lot of the brokers, insurance agents, lenders, the people that have been around for a while and are really solid, they're not afraid to niche, whereas others are because they don't know enough to be able to put all of their, all of their stones in that basket. So that's another way of differentiating. And I think a lot of it too is show, don't tell, right? Anyone can say they do something, especially on social media. But also, what have they done? What type of listings do they have? What deals have they negotiated? Are they similar to what you need? And that's just another kind of measure of doing your due diligence to make sure that you do connect with the right person. And two, I think it's a gut thing too, right? I always say, do your research, but then bounce it off your gut. Do you like the person? Does it feel right? Or is there that nagging feeling on your shoulder that just, you can't pinpoint it, but something doesn't feel right? So I say to honor that as well.
I like that a lot. I mean, I think that we talk about building relationships all the time, and it really is about knowing you need a role, knowing what that role is worth to you, investing in that role however you can. And a lot of these roles that we're talking about right now, it's investing your time, searching for the right people, having the conversations, having, coffee and deciding. But if you're hiring employees, a lot of times that is investing your actual cash, your hard-earned money. I was just talking with someone this morning about, bringing in a director of operations, hiring a bookkeeper and an accountant and a CFO, and really talking about all these elements and investing. They all align with each other in healthy businesses. And that is what commercial real estate investing is a business. Healthy businesses are built on solid business plans. That's not just the pro forma on a given property, but it's the entire way that you put together your team, your service providers, and the journey that you're taking everyone on.
It's true. And that's where I'm a distance runner. I don't know if you know that or not. I'm running the London Marathon, October of this year. But I liken commercial real estate to marathons. Some people don't have the bandwidth, the energy, or maybe the vision that they go in, they burn out fast. Also, and you know this, is that there's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of municipal approvals, this, that, and the other thing. And so when you choose your pivotal partners to work with, you're going to want to make sure that they do have that long-term vision, that they're not on the fence of if they should be doing this. And also, you need to be resourceful. And again, that word creative comes into play because there's numerous ways of structuring deals. There's numerous ways of getting to the right people within zoning or other approvals. And so it's really having someone that understands, that has provided the services that you're looking for and has been able to bring those deals across the finish line so that they can do that for you. And each deal is unique. So it's not a one and done. There's no two deals that are the same. There might be parallels or certain dollar amounts that are complementary, but there's different items that are added into leases to account for your personal needs. And I think that's really important. It's not cookie cutter by any means, but you keep stacking the deals, the knowledge, and how you solve the problem. So in insurance, in brokerage, all of the related fields, we solve people's problems. And that also stems from our why. And that's why we're in business. And with entrepreneurs, you have to really look and, like you said, Jeremy, create that plan and know that it'll be adjusted as you go because it's not one and done.
Yeah. One more thought I just had is surrounding yourself with people who will challenge you from their position of expertise, and in reverse, trusting people enough that you let them run with their expertise. If I'm hiring a real estate attorney to help me write a lease, yeah, I can push back a little bit when they mark something up. And if they, talk it through with them, help come to understand exactly why they want to write something some way. And then if we realize that the two of us have different perspectives on it, we work it out and then we go from there. But ultimately, we're trusting the team members that we hire on, and they're pushing our, I think that's when you have a good team member, is when they push your concept of what something means or what success looks like in a given thing.
Exactly. And I think people need to take ownership. That's a big word. They need to take ownership, because we all know our arenas really well, but putting our faith in others, it doesn't mean that you follow blindly. To your point, with the attorney, with someone else, you ask the questions and you should feel good about the answer that you get, or keep asking until you understand. And, you see it of like, oh, well, I trusted them in this. It's like, you have to do your due diligence for everything. And again, ask the questions until you feel comfortable, because when you sign your name on that dotted line, you are taking ownership of it. And, we never stick the landing 100% of the times, but you evaluate if something didn't go as planned, where did it fall apart, and how can you do it differently next time, whether it's selecting someone else, or maybe someone realized they just didn't ask all of the questions because they didn't want to look, like they weren't knowledgeable, or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. All right, Heather, to finish out this show, we're going to play a game. And this game is called Would You Rather? And this is the commercial real estate version of Would You Rather, which means I am going to offer you two very bad choices, two choices that neither of which you likely will want to take. My question to you is, which will you take? Not obviously having to take, but in our game. And why have you chosen that one above the other? Now, you're working in triple net and in retail, so I'm going to make my would you never in that space. So here are the two options. In both cases, you need to represent a property. You are going to try and lease this property to someone who can be a tenant inside that property. The first property is in Madison, Wisconsin, but it's not a very desirable property. It's been vacant for a while. Maybe the owners just haven't put into it what they should have. It's a property struggles and maybe isn't one that you necessarily want to represent, but you have to in our game. Would you rather? That is option number one. Option number two is a desirable property in a tertiary market besides Madison, Wisconsin. Some other market that you don't know as well. You need to lease a property in that market. Do you choose the property problem, or do you choose the market problem?
I would choose the property. And here's my reasoning behind that. So having the knowledge and the experience that I do, I would impress upon the landlord of why they would want to invest in their property, as it would up-level their rent. So I would show them, this is what you've lost due to your vacancy. And I would show them how much they could save by bringing in the right tenant through the various improvements needed. And then through social media, videos, unique marketing, and certain retailers are better with more of a destination, like Medi spas, things like that. People don't want to come out looking a little rough. Some of these different arenas are best out of the spotlight. So I would approach it from that aspect. And I think that could provide a great win-win with the right tenant and the upgrades needed.
I love it. Stick with your knowledge of the market rather than giving that up for a property that maybe is easier to put tenants in.
Infuse it with creativity. Exactly. And influence.
I love it. So last question, Heather, you've come on the show and provided us a bunch of knowledge about investing, particularly in retail and restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin. Who is someone you would love to hear on the Managing Commercial Real Estate Risk podcast? Someone who maybe you're interested in their perspectives on risk or other types of commercial real estate topics. Who would you like to hear on the show?
I would love to hear Alex Rodriguez. He's a broker out of Los Angeles.
Not the baseball player.
No, I know, but we joke, we call him A-Rod, but he just doesn't accept that. He's very humble.
I love it.
But he has a great why, and I think you'd really enjoy that conversation as well. So I'll just kind of plug it in that way.
I love it. Well, I'll reach out to you and ask if you can help me connect with him, and you can hear him on a future show. Heather, if folks want to do so, how can they connect with you?
Sure. They can connect with me through our website, abstractcommercialrealestate.com. I provide retail restaurant insights there, different information. And of course, they could reach me on my cell phone, 608-239-4781.
All right, Heather, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Jeremy. It was a joy.
Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation on managing commercial real estate risk. Today, I hope that you gain some real insight into how real asset managers, real operators work to manage risk, to take bigger leaps, and have fewer face plants. That's what this show is about, and hopefully you got that from the show today. If you got value from this episode or any episode you've listened to so far, I hope you'll give us a 5-star rating and written review. Tell us what you enjoyed about this episode, who you would like to hear on the show in the future, and what topics you hope we address. Your insight is key to making this show exactly what you need from us: the capacity to take bigger risks and do it as safely as possible. All right, here's to managing the risk in commercial real estate to unleash those profits you know you deserve. Have a wonderful day.